Road trip time. In this series of videos, we're going to be talking about the dashboard lights. In video 2, we'll be going over the compass light. Now, why is this important? Why is it the first one? Because it deals with direction. Because movement and direction are not the same thing. In our last conversation, I introduced the idea that human beings have dashboards. Just as a vehicle uses dashboard lights to communicate important information before small problems become expensive ones, our lives are constantly communicating with us. The difficulty is not that the information isn't there. The difficulty is that few of us were ever taught how to recognize it. The first dashboard light I'd like to explore is the compass light. It exists because one of the most common assumptions in modern life is also one of the least examined. We quietly assume that movement and direction are the same thing, and they aren't, not at all. Over the years, I've had countless conversations with people whose lives looked extraordinarily successful on the outside. They had built careers, raised families, led organizations, accumulated accomplishments and awards, and even earned the admiration of all the people around them. But the thing is, even though they were intelligent, disciplined, and deeply responsible, sooner or later, many of those conversations arrived at the same unexpected place. I've done everything I thought I should do, they would tell me. Why does something still feel off? So, I've always found that question fascinating because it rarely comes from people who have failed. More often, it comes from people who have succeeded. Somewhere along the journey, movement quietly replaced direction, and that is the compass light. Their calendars became fuller, their responsibilities became greater, their lives became increasingly efficient. They simply stopped asking whether all of that movement was still carrying them toward the life that they actually wanted to live. Our culture rewards momentum. Promotions are visible, achievements are visible, productivity is visible. We celebrate people who are constantly moving because movement is easy to recognize. Direction is much quieter. It asks questions that don't fit neatly onto quarterly reports or resumes. It asks whether the life that we're leading still reflects the person that we wanted to become. One of the quieter ironies of adulthood is that very responsible people often become extraordinarily good at fulfilling expectations that they never consciously chose. Expectations may have been inherited from families, professions, cultures, or simply from years of doing what seemed sensible at the time. None of those decisions are necessarily wrong. The difficulty is that inherited direction often goes unexamined. We assume that because we've been traveling for a long time, we must still be headed where we always intended to go, and that's not necessarily the case. The compass light isn't interested in judging your ambition. Ambition has accomplished remarkable things. It has advanced science, built companies, strengthened communities, solved problems that once seemed impossible. The question is not whether you're ambitious. The question is whether your ambition remains aligned with your deepest values, instead of quietly drifting towards someone else's definition of success. I've often thought that pilots understand something the rest of us occasionally forget. Before worrying about speed, pilots verify direction. A slight deviation at the beginning of a journey may seem insignificant, yet over hundreds of miles, it produces an entirely different destination. Human lives work in much the same way. We rarely wake up one morning and discover we've become someone else. More often, we arrive there one small, unquestioned decision at a time. Perhaps that's why compass is so important. This is one of the most important and most missed lights on the dashboard because it doesn't flash with urgency like the gas light. It doesn't accuse. It simply asks whether we've taken the time to look up from our responsibilities long enough to notice where they're leading us. Sometimes the most important decision isn't accelerating. Sometimes it's the willingness to pause long enough to ask whether this road still deserves our attention, whether it's taking us to the place that we really wanted to go. One of the central ideas behind finding the force is that better decisions begin with better awareness. Before we attempt to change our lives, it helps to understand where we are, how we arrived there, and whether our current direction still reflects what matters most. Navigation has never been about moving faster. It's always been about seeing more clearly. Before we continue to the next dashboard light, I'd like to leave you with 5 questions for reflection. On a scale from 1 to 10, how clearly do you understand the direction your life is taking? 1. Do your daily decisions reflect your deepest values? 2. Do you feel connected to a future that feels meaningful? 3. Are your biggest decisions guided primarily by intention or by expectation? 4. And finally, if nothing changed over the next 5 years except for the passage of time, where would your current direction eventually lead you? Don't worry about the numbers, although you can rate those 1 to 10. Just notice what the questions awaken. Awareness has never been the finish line. It's the place from which thoughtful navigation becomes possible. In our next conversation, we'll turn our attention to the fuel light, because even the clearest destination becomes difficult to reach when the vehicle making the journey has been quietly running on empty for far too long. This is Dr. Courtney Hale, PhD, and I'll be guiding you through a series of 5 videos dealing with the dashboard lights, and this will help you to navigate your life better in a more productive, more positive, more peaceful, and more powerful way. I call that finding the force.